this lesson, I'm going to talk about how our human brain perceives and retains information. We only capture a small part of the whole frame, and this can vary from one person to another. That's why, before we start designing, it's important to understand how our brain works, so you can predict and control what's in this frame. First of all, we understand images faster than words. Our brain processes visual information 15 times faster than text. If you see this example, which part do you understand better? And which is more memorable? Both have the same information, but your eye goes straight to the right image. So the visual example can support your message and help with the adoption of idea. Second of all, we don't go in order. When we see plain text, we usually read from left to right and from top to bottom. In other cultures, the direction can be different, but the order is the same. It's linear and sequential. Now, what happens when you see a chart? First of all, you will see the general proportion and the direction. And then your eye will start to scan the image looking for additional cues. Another thing to have in mind is the order in which your visualization go in relation to text, for example, in presentations or reports. When you place a graph before the text, its role is to give an overview, whereas when the graph comes after the text, its role is to give you additional clues and more information. We first see what stands out. Our mind quickly notices the changes in pattern and goes straight to it. That's why the most successful graphs have only one salient point. In this first example, we see the sales of the ice cream shops. Each of the columns have different color. And even though we notice that on the weekends they sell more, you're not sure whether it is or not the point that they want to communicate. Now, on the second example, you have exactly the same chart with the same numbers, but you quickly see that on weekends the sales are way higher because of the color of the columns. So we don't need to know the exact data and the actual numbers to get an idea. We just rely on the change of color. Next, we seek meaning and make connections. Once we saw what stands out, we try to make sense of it immediately. Our brain starts to make connection between the elements without even knowing if there is a connection. Like in this graph, you assume that the team A is the orange section of the graph because the title is orange and it says team A. You automatically assume that the blue section of the graph is team B, but it's not even mentioned in the graph. This means that when you present elements together, they should be connected in a meaningful way. And the last one, we rely on our past experiences. There are some visual rules that we are not questioning anymore, like green being used for good and red for wrong, or north being up and south down, or the directions of left and right. That's why when you see these images being flipped and those rules being broken, it feels weird and confusing. So try to keep these 5 things in mind when designing your visuals. In the next lesson, we are going to see why we need visual content.